My son is 14, so it should come as no surprise that one of the windows in his room has a crack in it and is kind of falling apart. We don't know how it happened. No, it doesn't matter. These things, it just happens.
Is
Stuff
it
occurs.
broken or falling apart?
I would say falling apart that's the very astute categorization there. That
Well,
it's
I
it's
live in
it's
an old house, so yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think I mean I would say that this is I hadn't anticipated this distinction, but I think this is worth spending a little bit of time on before I get to my question for the episode. I think broken would indicate that it is no longer functional, whereas falling apart, it could be broken. It could also be functional, but it's on its way to falling apart.
Well,
Like
well,
it's sort of like it's sort of at like I don't know if I would call it half or 2/3 entropy has affected it, but it's hanging on. There's something still there.
my distinction was someone broke it versus the entropy of the house has taken another window with it.
Yeah, I think it's like there's broke means someone like worn out or like
Okay, okay, I like that. I like
weathered.
that.
That's sort of an erosion over time.
And it doesn't have to be intentional. Accidents happen. This is
True.
blameless.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe to use the passive voice, who or whatever broke it didn't do a good enough job breaking it, and that's kind of the distinction there. Anyways, so it gets cold here in the Netherlands, which I think for both of you might be a foreign concept given your geographies. It's
a little warm
just
right now.
odd.
Yeah.
But there's a substantial crack in the lower corner of his window. Still hasn't fallen out of the window, so the frame. So we went to assess, what it would cost to replace the windows. Very typical housing situation where like you can't just replace the window, you've got to replace the whole housing that has the window, and etc. and so forth. And then of course, the people who replace the housing, they don't do the drywalling inside, so you also got to get a drywaller. And then of course it's like Dutch row houses, so you got to get some scaffolding to put up there, and then they got to get a crane to drop this thing down, which is all cool. I mean, it's just it's one of those things I think culturally that you wouldn't be too shocked at because it's just like the way things are, right? Whereas like what I was just describing for like a Texas house, you're kind of like, I don't understand why I can't just go to Costco and get like some saran wrap to put on the window and be done.
Right? About to say, get yourself some high quality Dutch cardboard there and tape that thing shut.
Dutch cardboard. That sounds like something from the Urban Dictionary. I'm gonna have to go look that up. Anyhow, while we're waiting, also this is really just raising a lot of miniature topics for me. Also, I think I've mentioned this before, but I think we've finally disproven the economic principle of supply and demand based on how difficult it is to get people to fix your house and how long it takes. Now, the supply and demand thing would suggest that if there were, for example, a wait until June to have your window replaced, that would be indicative of there being so much demand that supply was backed up, and therefore prices would equalize or equilibriumize based on down to accommodate people who would want to pay for stuff. Now maybe I don't know what Adam Smith called it or all the other people, but maybe the natural price is so high that no one would pay to have it done faster. But my understanding back, I don't know how it is in Australia, but back in Texas, it's also very difficult to find people to come fix your house, which would suggest you have a supply problem. And I don't know, something. I thought the economists were supposed to take care of this in the 70s or something, but they haven't.
This is like every time I encounter this sort of thing, I think I'm in the wrong industry. Like I'm gonna go fix windows. Yeah, maybe that's what we should be doing.
Yeah. There may not be a lot of upside. It might be just a pure cash flow business, not like you have
to use the economics of it all, Kote. Like, is it just as simple as like the price? There's just a cap. Like, there's only so high you're willing to go to replace to have the window, right? You're just sort of like there's an artificial number, and it's just like there's never gonna be enough people to want to do it.
You lost me at scaffolding.
I think Brandon, you might be onto something. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the right kind of plugin for Excel to do that kind of chart. but probably it's something in a lot in that area. I think a highly related thing, and then I'll try to get to what I wanted to ask you to. But I think a highly related thing might be the quandary of airline pricing, where frequent travelers would be like, even with my own money, I'd gladly pay $50 more a ticket for this experience not to be shitty. But I don't even really have that option. It's like you either get the shitty experience or you have to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars more. But there's not like this equilibrium. I don't even know what I'm saying, equilibrium. But that's another thing to quantify is like maybe airline prices are too low, and I'm not sure if that's if that's helpful. But so there's this draft, this hole in the window. And the window person suggested using what they call here in the Netherlands montage, which you will know as cock. And, basically just to use that to kind of close up the gap. But the gap is, I'm going to say, maybe an inch and a half or so. And so I was there at the hardware store, the Praxis, looking at the montage and thinking, well, I'm going to have to do like an inch wide of layers of this cock, letting bits of it dry to fill this out, and that seems ridiculous. So instead, they don't call it here, but in the States we have this thing called Great Stuff, which is this can that you have that you spray, and this foam comes out and expands and hardens. It's almost like you can imagine it being some kind of like James Bond bomb where he's got a pin, and then he sprays it and it expands out and he blows stuff up. So they don't call it here, but I got that, and I haven't used it yet. But first of all, I'm just going to show you two, and I'm going to describe it. It comes in a giant bottle, which is, let's say, if you took the height of my head and you added a half, so it's about 150% as high as my head, which is an abnormal thing. But I think it does this type of packaging, and it says you're getting 50% free on top of it. Now, if you look at the other options on the shelf, they're all the same size can, and the prices are all the same. Now, this would suggest to me that you're not actually getting 50% free. This is just 100% at 100% of the price. And so I wanted to ask you to, like, when you see this kind of packaging that you're getting some amount free, like where does your brain go? Do you see it? Do you think about it? Like, what processing happens? Does it work? Are you like, oh, I'm getting this one because I'm getting 50% free? Like, what? How do you react to this kind of this packaging where it's saying you get more for the same price?
I think it always works. Like, I mean, you just at a minimum, you kind of have to like look at it, do your like cost per ounce calculation, and then from there you just kind of figure out like, am I going to pay more? So I don't know. I feel like it's almost impossible not to do it. I don't know, Matt. What do you do? Do you avoid it?
It sounds like somebody's got a lot of space. I mean, I kind of look at things. I'm like, am I ever going to use this again? It's great that 50% is free, but do I need 5 gallons of it? Right.
Oh, I like this mindset.
So maybe, you're like, rather than, buy this, leave it on the counter for 2 years and then throw it away, maybe try something a little less. Is there a smaller size that will cover? I mean, obviously you have to get enough to cover the job. You don't want to go back to your Netherlands Home Depot. Nobody wants that. But there's also like, man, I have like so many containers of so many random things just lying around the counter. It's like a toxic waste site. Do I need all this?
Now you identified why I bought this big bottle, because I was like, what if I run out?
Well, no.
So
Clearly,
I've got to get the giant one.
Yeah.
Well, but
I mean, again, scaffolding. It sounds like a giant job.
Yeah, and like this phenomena happens, I think, a lot with cereal boxes, where you get the cereal boxes and it's a bigger box and it's like now 20% more or whatever. But it does seem it seems like just an odd. I mean, I guess it does work. That's like from the school of advertising. Did y'all ever read the books where there was like supposedly a little skull in the ice cubes on liquor ads? That there was this subliminal messaging and death cult. I forget.
No, but where can I get that brand?
But these are one of the books back in the 80s when I'd go to Half Price Books and I would try to find this. This book was everywhere. It was just like the conspiracy theory that there's subliminal advertising. And, obviously, I mean, it's not subliminal if it's gigantic and red and says 50% free, but that kind of programming seems to work on the mind. Like it, even if it's just defies expectations, not defies it, it defies like what you think would work. It must work. So I think that's, maybe we should start doing that in enterprise software. We can say, 50% more configuration or 50% more productivity for the same price.
But I think that's just the ELA, isn't it? Isn't that just the enterprise license agreement? The all-you-can-eat buffet, if you will, of software.
That's true. It'll instead of it'll be an infinite percent free.
I do like where Matt's going to. I feel like there is maybe it should be more widely known. It's sort of like, I don't know what we call it, like holding cost or the mental load of just having too much stuff happen. Like there's kind of like that. There's always that like Marie Kondo and like simplify your life.
Exactly.
Stuff. But maybe you need some like shortcut of like, not for like cleaning out your closet, but like you're shopping and you kind of need a shortcut to be like, yeah, it's 50% free, but it actually is
I'm gonna waste 50% of it.
Cognitive load of crap by like whatever, some small value. But if you start adding that over time, you're like, man, I got a lot of unused. Like, I guess maybe it's the ultimate question for IT or for people at home. It's like, I still have my box of cables, that I really probably
you had to bring it back to me.
But it's just I still feel like I need them, but like I probably don't. So I don't know.
Well, maybe I want to. I think we got a great. There's in the Merlin Mann podcasting world, there's two principles that float around there. One of them is whenever you have leftovers, have a plan or throw it away. Like you need to have a plan for what you're going to do with your leftovers, and if you don't have one, just throw it away because you're going to throw it away eventually. And then the second one is anytime you bring something into the house, realize that at some point you're going to have to bring it out of the house. Yes. So you should think about that kind of full. Would that be, is that ROI or TCO? Maybe that's more of a TCO thing, like how much it actually costs you to have that thing. And then finally, I want to maybe throw out one other thing as a pricing and packaging kind of phenomena to think about how it implies in life. And oftentimes at our grocery store and other ones, there'll be a lot of buy two get one free, or like the worst of this is like buy one and get the second half off. And every time I see that, I think, or I could buy one and just pay for one. Right? Like I don't want to buy one and then pay half for another. I could just have less and spend less. And so maybe arm yourself with that next time when you see these BOGO or these TOGO phenomena. Like you could actually save more money by just buying one of them. Now, there really is, if you wanted to save money, you wouldn't be buying Sonos speakers. I think all three of us can attest to. I remember when Sonos speakers were like maybe the only way to have like the whole Internet of Things music experience, where you had wire connected speakers and people would be all like, oh, I've got the Sonos set up and I have my 5 gajillion songs that I have done on my IDV3. Is that what it is, Matt Ray? You would know.
It certainly is. Yes, IDV3.
I've done the encoding correctly. And then I think maybe my understanding of how this school of living evolved, I think maybe Plex servers came around, and that's just kind of taken over the people who like catalog their MP3s and want to have their music. And now I think, I went back and revisited Tailscale just because it seemed fun. But now we're in an era where I think not only could you have the Plex server after the perfectly curated IDV3 MP3 tags, but if you put it on Tailscale, you could listen to it at the grocery store while you're contemplating if you're going to get that third thing free after buying 2. You could just have it all hooked up in the world.
Never leave your home bubble.
But back to the Sonos thing. That seems to be the original, like, we're going to involve Wi-Fi networking with music. And my understanding is the quality was very high and things like that. But there was a bit of a persnickety thing over the past couple of years, which I just barely know. But Brandon, I know you can bring us up to speed, because I want to get to the main thing I want to cover is the new executive memo that has come out about how they're going to fix what's happened. But what has happened?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's just an interesting story of digital transformation or just whatever, managing IT inside a company that's maybe not first and foremost thinking about, the app. So the short history is they released a new app, mobile app, whatever, 6 months, a year ago, came out that was missing a lot of the previous features and was extremely buggy, right? To the point that like people just had a hard time using it. So, and I think this is sort of like a story of any type of software. You roll it out, don't really realize all the features people really love, and then suddenly, you're kind of stuck. So they got themselves in a situation which is still not clear to me why they couldn't roll back to the old app, and they basically were in a position where they couldn't fix the new application fast enough. So for a while, the CEO came out with a plan. It's like, we know, we're sorry, kind of fell on the sword. But I think 6 months have gone by, and it's impacted their sales, obviously, in some like meaningful way. And I think the board of directors was finally like, both the CEO had to go, and then right after that, the I guess it was the chief product officer, I believe, is also going to leave as well, which seems right. So I don't know. I think it's just a good example of like, this is, I don't know, for all the software engineers who've ever like, if you created like a legacy tech backlog, right, technical debt, and said, hey, one day this is going to cost us. It's like, this is going to be, to me, the canonical example going forward of like, see, we told you. And both these people ultimately lost their jobs. So that's now led us to present day, where I'll let you take it from here, Cote. They have hired a new CEO who's, I guess, come in from the board, and at least in the interim will kind of like, if you will, right the ship. But I don't know, it's kind of one of these, lessons learned, I guess. I'm too late for the previous CEO and chief product officer. It's like, in this case, they either didn't listen, or they got themselves in a situation where maybe they just felt like they had no choice. They were launching a new product, the headphones, that I believe the new software required, or vice versa. The new software, or the headphones required new software. And that may have been the dilemma, right? They're just like, if we don't get this product out, we're dead. And then someone sort of ignored the advice of like, we're not ready. And now they both lost their jobs. So that's where we are today.
I having read so much about this, so this is a distinction I make between, I might have even said this last week, between like the New York Times and the Economist, is I feel like I got New York Times style reporting in the articles I read about this. That was telling me what happened, just with no context or why, right? Like, I actually, now that you're going through this, I don't really know what was so bad that happened, other than something was wrong with app delivery. So that would be fun to look up. But it sounds like it was a story of just like the maybe sacrificing product perfection for market hopes and dreams.
Or maybe just more simple is like Sonos
accelerating pace of innovation.
Yeah, well, to your earlier point, like I think Sonos has a pretty passionate set of people that have been using it for a long time. But I think a lot of those speakers are older, which makes sense, right? Because like if it's working, it's a speaker. Why wouldn't you keep it around? But I think they just got themselves in a position where it's like, we got to support this old hardware. We make money from launching new hardware. Let's launch the new hardware. But they sort of, and I think that's the classic trap of like, well, now you've just made a whole bunch of other users really mad, and now it's going to overshadow like your new headset, right? And so that's sort of like, it's like the dilemma with all these things. So I think that's like inside of it. Like I always think it's probably too simple to be like the CEO and the chief product officer had no idea, and they said do it anyway. It's probably pretty nuanced. Like they probably felt a lot of pressure to get the headphones out, while also knowing they did risk some problems with some old users. But they probably just figured like, oh, we can manage it. Like the app won't work exactly right, but we'll get there eventually, right? And I think in that case, that's probably the dilemma. And that, to me, maybe that's the version of the Economist article when it comes out. Maybe they'll get into some of that nuance.
I mean, that's the crux of the issue, though, is why didn't you just maintain the existing software, launch the new one? Oh, it does the headphones, and everything else is beta, and keep maintaining the old stuff. And so slowly you suck it up and maintain two branches at the same time. I know it sucks, but you're gonna have to have a V2 of this that takes time to work out the kinks. It sounds like they just burned the bridge behind them and said, YOLO. And I don't think that's, most people who support a SaaS or, long-lived product know that like you're in this for, years. You should expect that you're going to have people who, I mean, speakers aren't even phones, right? They're going to last 10 years. They're They're gonna last. People are gonna get mad if you don't support it. They'll badmouth your product. You need to have the expectation that this is this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Well, to your point, the original sin I think is that, and then coupled with like always have a plan to roll back. Like there's no software in the world where it's like, you never like, hey, if we go this way, we never going back. It's like, no, like when a meeting starts that way, it's like, we got to just wait. We have to wait until the point that like we have to have the capability to roll back. And if we can't, then we just got to work harder, right? We have to like find some way to do it. Whether that's literally having 2 apps for a while, right? Or if it's, putting in a lot more work. So, I mean, to me, again, seems obvious to us now, or maybe, but I, again, to your point, Coach A, the economist version of this, maybe they were really stuck, right? Maybe they were getting a lot of heat from the board to like, why are we getting killed in headphones? Like, why is nobody have Sonos?
Yeah, but you can still put a skeleton crew on maintenance. I mean, hopefully the new CEO is going to come over from Red Hat or Microsoft, and he's like, check this out. We have this thing called end of life support. We can support this thing for another 20 years if people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah, no, totally true. That's true.
Well, speaking of the new CEO, I'm not gonna. This isn't our old exegesis podcast, so I'm not gonna read the whole memo. It's brief enough that you can read it on its own. But I think it's January 15th, 2025. I think we might already have the software defined talk executive memo of the year. I think it's good stuff.
Wow.
So
all we need now is the slide of the year, and we can wrap the 2025 up.
That's right. We'll just keep re-releasing the same episode every week. And
sorry.
But so you got an interim CEO coming in, right? To fix it, to quote a word that he uses later on, to help a company that's in limbo. And the great thing about this letter is, I think maybe every third sentence he drives home the point that what was the hair club for men? I'm not only the president, I'm also a client. Like that he is an avid user of it. He's used it for a long time. He names, I don't know Sonos stuff, but he names 3 different brand names of it. He even mentions that while his daughter was being born, they used a Sonos speaker in the delivery room, which is great. I mean, that right there, now that I'm saying that, this is like a double bagger for an executive memo. You get to one, talk about, your dedication and et cetera. But then 2, you get to just slip in a kid reference. Now, I don't know about the corporate correspondence you get, but people love putting in a kid reference, which I don't think that's bad at all. I think it's good. I think every now and then you got to put a kid reference in so that people like calm the fuck down and realize that everyone's a bunch of humans.
Or later on, they know who you're going to go spend time with.
Exactly. Right. I like the kid photos put in there that it kind of implicitly say, 1, we're all humans, let's hang out. And then 2, next time you want me to work after hours, please bring this email up and look at these cute kids. Right. It's a good reminder of things. So, but then ultimately, I mean, as the ultimate cap off on all this, right? So he's establishing himself as a rabid fan. And there's a little bit of industry expertise put in here, I think that he worked at Pandora and did that. He, oddly enough, doesn't spend a lot of time talking about how he's awesome at businessing things, which is probably fine. It's probably the kind of thing where they want to know more about who he is and why he's gonna fix things. But then he just kind of offhandedly mentions, I also have a tattoo of some Sonos product on me.
Whoa.
And so I think when you lay that out, I'm sure maybe at Red Hat, there's some people who have Red Hat tattoos on them. But my sense is that like, there's not a lot of people at IBM who've got like IBM tattooed on them. Although, I don't know, that would be pretty awesome. If you have that, you should send us a picture if it's appropriate. I don't want, to see inappropriate things. But I think right there, you got, and then he also mentions he's only interim, as he puts in quotes. Interesting thing to put in quotes now that I look at it, because it makes you think, what does interim mean if it's in scare quotes? But he also says he's moving his family to Santa Barbara. And so like, that's a pretty big move if you're just the temporary interim CEO. So this executive, fully committed. And I think,
well, do you think, I think it's not too much to say he obviously wants the job, right? He wants to be the full-time CEO.
That's true.
It doesn't seem like
I think that's absolutely true. Yeah. I guess if he's just gunning for like chief revenue officer. Whew, he's really going to nail that too with this energy. Like whatever's coming here, he's got it. So I'm looking forward. Now this is just a cut and paste of the email, so I don't know if there was a scanned in alpha channel signature on it as well. But I'm looking forward to seeing more emails like this from the executives out there.
But I think the classic part of it is like there are, I would say there are zero details in here about what he's going to do, right? He's very energetic. He has moved his family. He has demonstrated some interest in use of the products. And then there's, I mean, it's pretty, I won't say it's super long, but it's just like, if you're reading this as the Sonos employee, I think you probably know it's like things have not gone well. It's been a lot of beatings in this company for the last 6 months. Everybody is mad at us. And like how, so I mean, after you kind of get beyond the like, okay, he likes the products and he likes this. I mean, you have to be thinking, I would be thinking as an employee, like, okay, well, what are you going to do that is different? And I guess he did mention they're going to have a meeting, so maybe he'll announce it at the meeting. But it just, to me, all of this comes back to like, is it like performative? Like, of course you have a lot of energy. Of course you like the company. Of course, like why? You know what I'm saying? Like, what else would you be here for, right? Or why? But it would be more like, hey, I think you have to like the audience, because there's a lot of right? There's a lot of in this, and when you just kind of go through it, it's just like, okay, you've really, you've told us a lot about yourself and all the things that you like to do, but you haven't really said much about us, right? And like what we're gonna do.
This is true, and I was also contrasting this with like, you couldn't really write an email like this for like an ERP system. You wouldn't be like, oh. When that baby was being delivered, we were managing our supply chain right there in the delivery room. Like I rolled in a rack of the software needed, or even more realistically, it probably would be rare that a programmer would be promoted all the way up to a CEO at a company that worked on programmer stuff, right? And so they would say like, I'm not only a president, I'm also a client. That I've used this thing and understand that. And, it's another interesting, like that was actually the first thing that occurred to me reading this is like, I wonder how frequent it is that an executive is a customer of the stuff that they use. Like, obviously, if you work at a car company, that works. Like if there's something that a consumer buys, that works. But, if you're in B2B stuff, it's a little difficult to figure out how you become a very excited customer of it. Like, I don't know. Is like the CEO of like Google and AWS and Azure? Are they like, God damn, I love this Kubernetes stuff. Like I've been using it.
We're talking about maybe Matt Garman in a minute. I think he had an interview this week. But before we get to that, I do think some of this stuff, and I read a bunch of things this week that made me think of like, I've read so many anecdotes about different things. I just kind of I want a whole podcast someone to create called tentatively called anecdote investigations, right? And like, so from this memo, the one I want investigated was like, okay, there was a Sonos Move and playing in the delivery room when his daughter was born. So it's like, I literally want someone to go in. I want ProPublica frontline to be deployed and be like, I want to know everything about this. Like, what did his wife think about it? What did the delivery people think about it? How much was the Move packed like in the go bag, right? Or was he like, hold on, before we get going, let me go get the Move, right? Did he have to set it up? Did it interfere with the wireless networks? Like, I want to know so much about these anecdotes. Like, is this really... Like, was this really a good thing? Like, if we interviewed everybody, like, was his wife like, I was giving labor and he was messing around with the Bluetooth connection to listen to music. And you know what? It drove me insane. And only by the grace of God did our daughter come into this world. Like, maybe that's the answer. Maybe she was like, no, I demanded you bring the Move and play a certain passage. So
yes.
I want someone to take these anecdotes and go deeper. So whatever podcast wants to take this, I want to know everything about this, right? This is the most important thing we're going to investigate.
I would totally listen to that because there was probably some discussion. He's like, Pantera? Yes, no.
Right, yeah. What was the playlist? Was it pre-decided?
What is the playlist
did they use? Did they get on the Wi-Fi? Like there's just 1,000 questions that come from these anecdotes. So really, that's what honestly, at the first all hands, I recommend someone be like, before you jump in here, and I know you're energetic, I have a few questions about the labor and delivery scene. May we run through those before we proceed?
This sounds like a corporate version of the Search Engine podcast.
Absolutely, and go for like an hour. Don't give up the mic. Just keep asking questions until you've exhausted everything to know about it. I think it would be fantastic.
Well, speaking of exhausting questions, I think there was also an interview with the AWS CEO Matt Garman, which I know, Brandon, you listened to, and tonight I had the pleasure of reading through the transcript as we watched Fantastic Mr. Fox. Good juxtaposition, seeing how the great Wes Anderson film, how the Fox goes here and there, and also some reflections on how AWS is run. I think there's it was a lot of it for the Amazon heads out there. Not much new, but it's always interesting to see how things are rearticulated, and there's a few interesting details. Now, I'll go over a few of them, and then Brandon and Matt, y'all can discuss your perspective. But I think the first thing we like to track, as always, when it comes to public cloud CEOs, is which inning of the marathon are we in, and and I think there's not a strong indication other than early, but there's a couple of things that I think are interesting. He's basically he says over 18 years we've grown to 110 billion, growing at 19%, but we're still in the early stages, right? So we're coming up on 20 years, still early stages. And then of course, I think the interviewer, I don't know if the interviewer asked this directly, but more or less it comes up like, so where are you going to get the new customers? If you've already, I guess he does ask this, if you've already got all these big name customers, where are the new customers coming from? And then Mr. Matt here says, he thinks that their largest customers, they only have, I'm summarizing, 10 to 40% of the workloads in cloud, right? So for big organizations, something around 40% is the maximum amount of workloads they've moved over, which is way more than the third inning of the first marathon. But still, it's indicative of like how much more is left to go. So I think,
all right, but I think right here, to jump in here, Kote. So this is under the interviewer is Nilay Patel, right? So he does these long interviews with CEOs. So the missed opportunity, as I was listening, was like, because I think he gave the standard. I mean, Garman's given the standard answer, and that he's trying to apply like the multiple. It's like, hey, man, like most of these big companies haven't even done it. Like you should give us a 40% multiple or whatever, 40 times multiple. But the natural question the interview he should have asked would be like, why haven't they moved fast? And do you think those workloads are ever coming over? Why or why not? Right. And then he would have given an answer of like, of course they're all coming over, and be like, well, it's been 18 years, right? Like, I think there was like a real missed opportunity to like dive in and like go deeper on that. That was like, if someone like watching it, was just like, man, I want more. Like, I want him to like go 3 levels deep in this question. I don't know if you got that from the transcript. But
No, I think there was some mention of like, I don't think everything's going to move, but yes, that would have been a good diagnosis to kind of ask the question I'm always snarkily scurrying around here is like, ooh, 18 years is a long time, right? Like what's the story of that? And I think there's a legitimate story around it, namely that like, well, it's taken a long time to have all these capabilities. Like it wasn't just instant, like we kind of thought it was way back in the old days, which is fine. Now, the other thing that I think there's a little bit of insight into, a lot of discussion last year, maybe even why Matt here has this job, not you, Matt, but this Matt, is because there was some AI boat missing. And I don't know, I'm trying to connect dots that maybe don't really reach together very well. But like, there's a little bit of discussion, the interviewer kind of, he's tried several times to bait him on like, not debate, but to bait him on like, you suck at AI. And like, he's pretty good at dancing around it and not taking the bait. But there's a view of like how Amazon chooses what to do that he kind of puts forward. And I feel like to synthesize a lot of it, it kind of, in this customer first thing, it more or less amounts to our customers want good ROI on what they're getting. And if they're not getting good ROI, we don't care. Right. And so it's almost this view of like, and he even says like, people are beyond the shiny prototypes, enterprisey customers are beyond the shiny prototypes of AI. And now they need to start showing the value. And I feel like maybe, again, I'm just kind of theorizing here. Maybe that's like, a strong filter that AWS has is that like, and it's going to sound absurd when I phrase it this way, but if there's not like immediate value to the service, we're not interested in doing it. Like it has to be something that people want to buy and find immediately valuable, which in contrast, you know, to the OpenAI people who are like, oh, this month we need another $50 billion. We just burned through that, right? Like, and we're, you know, so there is that might explain kind of the maybe some lateness of AI stuff is it's a not exactly the same, but just kind of a strategic error of like, oh, well, maybe we should have worked on something that had no immediate value because it will have value maybe in the future. There's even, I feel like there's even a little bit of the tone of like, we're not quite sure if this AI is going to be valuable and how, to what degree. So we kind of want to wait and see until we understand if it's a bunch of hype or it actually is great.
Well, they're wrapping it in a transactional model where, you know, they're like, look, you know, you finally figured out how to use AI. Nobody knew. Yeah, but here is something that you can, you know, you put your data in here into our service, you get this out, you know, and that's something we can all just put a meter on and understand the consumption model. How you use that, we have no idea, right? But we finally came up with something that we can meter and charge you for, and you know, you don't have to put a ton behind it until it starts to ramp up, right? So maybe it was just they needed to come up with the API and transaction model that they thought made sense to, you know, the old model of, oh, just pay with your credit card as you consume, right?
Yeah,
to me, that's the mental model you have to put around something before you can make it a service for AWS.
You've got some interesting like potential Zen product management and pricing stuff going here that like you don't, maybe you do, but there's a certain business model that's you can't sell anything that you can't charge for. And so like unless it like if you're going to launch a service that you can't collect money for, then you can't launch the service. Right?
Yeah, like, yeah. So
that eliminates a certain category of innovation. It doesn't mean you're not innovative. It's just one way of innovating. You kind of cut yourself off of. Which
you're cutting yourself out of like services businesses. You know, where I mean, because instead of starting with like, you know, the press release to announce this, they're starting with what does this look like as a line item on my AWS bill, right? And would somebody rationally think that makes sense? Right.
Also, and the other way it would break the Amazon toolbox is like the fictional press release you wrote would say something like Amazon released a cool new service, has no idea what it's useful for, but goddamn, it's cool. Right. Like,
but I think, you know, to your point, like I thought like here, like I thought his answer was like it is great deflection. And it's sort of like, if you just take it at face value, it's like, yeah, of course, we're only going to build things that customers see value from and are getting value from and that we're making money from. Makes total sense. Good answer, right? The missed opportunity was the follow-up was to say, because he asked him early on, he said, like, how do you work, right? And sort of he gave the immediate answer. He said, or how are you organized? And Eli asked that. And he sort of gave the like generic answer. And he's like, but no, how are you specifically? What are you doing? And you can tell it kind of got Garman a little bit. That was the only time I thought he was off kilter a little bit. He was like not sure what to say, right? And so he went on to say something along the lines of, you know, here at AWS, like we take, you know, if you will, working with customers very seriously. And then he implied and basically said that other companies say that, but, you know, he didn't say this part, but he said like other companies say that, but they don't really do it. So the follow-up questions I wish they had asked is like, one, you've worked at AWS for 18 years. And why are you so confident that what evidence do you have that no other companies are working with customers like you? That's question one. Like, why definitively have you figured this out? And like, why are you so confident in it? And then the follow-up here that really would have liked would be like, I can see you're only doing things that are interesting to your customers, but doesn't that mean you are often missing out on, if you will, potential, if you will, you know, whatever you want to call it, open markets, right? And isn't that the case that like huge markets like ChatGPT come along and you're somewhat blind to that because you're so focused on just being with the customers? Is that a disadvantage? Like, I would have loved to like drilled in on those areas to hear him like answer more about that, because I think otherwise it's just sort of like, yeah, we only build things people want, but it doesn't really imply that there are some trade-offs there.
Yeah. I think there's, I mean, obviously there's and I don't mean this in a dismissive or whatever way. Obviously there's something they're doing right, but there is something missing from the Amazon business mystique to capture what you're talking about here is like, but then how do you end up making sure your market timing is good, right? Like maybe you're allowed like missing a few giant trends here and there over the course of almost 20 years. But in general, you do seem to like actually deliver services in a timely way that generates a lot of revenue. And like, you know, for those of us who have worked at other customers, I mean, other companies that do listen to customers, like that kind of timing is really hard. Usually by the time your customers tell you what they want, it's too late to spend 2 years developing it. Right. And so like, and so you try to cultivate some way of like, I'm just going to say product management, but product management input where you're combining together, here's what a technology can do. How could I apply it to existing customer problems, even if they don't know that they want it? And then also find that very beginning of a, you know, the crossing the chasm curve of users who can be the, I forget what you call them, but the, you know, the first 5 users or 0 to 1 or whatever. And like that, I don't know how that fits into the Amazon production function. Although I don't really remember. I was walking the dog a lot when I was reading that Working Backwards book around.
But that would have been the interesting part to be like, because maybe the answer is just kind of what you said, right? It would be something like, well, we embed with our, you know, our solution consultants and our customer support people, we're embedded as far upstream with the customer as humanly possible so that we're seeing the problems they have directly before they're even asking about it. Like maybe that's the answer. But even if that's the answer, I'm like, I don't think that's like wholly unique. You know, man, that's kind of your world. I don't think that's wholly unique to like Amazon. I think lots of companies are like, hey, we need to have customer success people like sitting right with the customer all the time, helping them, experiencing the problems. And then we depend on them bringing us those problems before, you know, the customers trying to say, I want X. They're like, oh, and I think, you know, to me, I always just want more out of these conversations. It's like, you know, don't just tell me you do this. Like, if you're going to state it, prove it to me. Like, I want you to say something that's going to really blow me away. And success, to your point, success and revenue is definitely one indication. You're to your point, you're doing something right. But it's just like, is it truly unique? I mean, that's always what I want to know.
And also, you know, he doesn't say this directly, but it's kind of implied if you read it. Well, I don't know how direct or indirect it is, but like initially, he talks about Amazon itself being the initial customer, right? And you know, you even counted this over the years where someone's like, oh, we see what we do ourselves and then we apply it elsewhere. I guess really only the public cloud companies do that, but at some point, like having yourself be your first customer isn't too viable, although of all places, Amazon.
Although there, one of my favorite parts of the interview was that, because there he actually took some time to do what I said before. He completely dismissed the long time anecdote of like, oh, well, Amazon only built AWS to quote unquote, if you will, lease out spare capacity. And, you know, that way they didn't have to pay for it. He was like, that is totally wrong. That is not what we did. He's like, it doesn't make any sense, because what would we do? Like at Christmas time, we would tell like, you know, Netflix, turn off their servers. I mean, he just destroyed that whole thing, which I always kind of like. He was just like, none of this is true. He's like, we saw what we were doing and we figured we could maybe make a more generalized way of doing it. But that was just more like, you know, us kind of coming, you know, if you will, to kind of what we're talking about before. It's like this would be a good answer to that customer question would be like, we saw what our IT people were struggling with, and we basically built a new system from the ground up, inspired by what they wanted. But in no way was that ever like an overflow of capacity, which I always kind of appreciate. I'm like, oh, great. It's great to have someone on the record just like dismissing this stupid story that gets told like a million times over and over.
Yeah, that was at the very start, and I'd forgotten about that. But I remember reading that, thinking like, well, there you go. There's the new nugget in this story here. That was good stuff. Well, I read the transcript, Brandon. Do you recommend, if someone wanted to pursue it, do you think they should listen to it or read the transcript?
Well, I think this is just do whatever you prefer, however you prefer to consume content. I love audio stuff. So this is a great, 1.5, 2x interview, dog walk kind of thing. You'll know most of it if you follow AWS closely. But like I said, there's a couple nuggets in here that I think are interesting. And it's also, I thought it was really interesting. Like, I think Garman is an absolute clone of Jassy, much more than Slepsky, like just style wise. And there's only one point where I thought he got off track. And that was the only kind of interesting, which I mentioned before, when he kind of pinned him down of like, when he went 2 levels deep, like, okay, you kind of gave me the PR answer, but what are you specifically changing? And I thought that was kind of interesting to see where when he had to think a little bit on his feet, it sort of was kind of like, it kind of revealed a little bit more about him, I thought, than anything else. So to get that, I guess you'd have to listen to it. So maybe that's a long way of saying, yeah, to get those kind of subtleties, listen to it. But if you're just looking for like a quick, read it, I'm sure you can read it in just, a few minutes and you'll get most of it.
Yeah, and in the transcript, there's ellipses every now and then where, it makes it read as if he is like, oh, no, I don't want to give that answer. And then he switches it around every now and then, which is great. But you would catch that a lot better, I think. Well, I don't know. You would catch that in an audio version a lot better. But it was, if you like AWS, fine interview.
Knock yourself out.
Have fun. Well, speaking of things that are fine, I think I forget the exact wording we had in our resolution episode, but I think we were not going to talk about open source things.
Or come on.
However, it looks like the OpenTofu thing has been around for a year, and as far as I can tell, everything's okay. Is that right, Matt Ray?
That's what it looks like. Yeah. I mean, I have used it. I have seen it with customers. According to OpenTofu, their registry requests have tripled to over 6 million daily requests. That sounds pretty good. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of slowly taking a life of its own. I know I'm not alone at hoping that once the Hashi IBM thing finally closes, maybe there's let's get the band back together and sit at a big table and bring these things back together. But for now, OpenTofu does what Terraform does, and it has a life of its own.
Yeah, I think we just net this out as like the fork is doing what it's supposed to do. Things are going well, and I think so. It's kind of good to like just talk about like some successes of open source. That's why I sort of wanted to put some of these in here. It's like things are working as designed. Great, good job, OpenTofu. Keep it up.
Have you checked out that new terminal that that Mitchell guy released? I only read the headlines. Is that how's Terminal Land doing, Matt Ray?
Well, I have not tried it yet. I when iTerm started monkeying around with their AI integration, at first I was starting to like, oh, I better go find something else. But then you had to opt in, and I was like, it's fine, leave it alone. So I'm still rolling with iTerm. I have read up on it, and it looks promising, but also like I don't spend my day in the terminal, so it doesn't affect me that much. My terminal is still Emacs, so it doesn't. I am the target audience, but I haven't switched yet.
It sounds like trying out new terminals is like when I try to use Obsidian instead of Apple Notes or other editors every year.
But I haven't switched to Apple Notes, but I have switched to Apple Reminders. I'm trying the
good job.
The lifestyle. I'm
just you gotta give it a week because you're gonna encounter a lot of frustrations, a lot of things that are annoying, but just go through it. Travel through time.
Fine.
There you go.
It beats what I was doing, which is writing things down or typing them up and then trying to come back to them and circle back. I'm like, I just reminders in Kanban mode. It's kind of working.
I think I'm gonna throw out. I think we can add another chapter to the defaults lifestyle philosophy. I think we've gone over the distinction of the fine gradient that things can be like not good. I forget exactly the fine gradient. I'll have to listen to the tapes. But you got like not good, okay, fine, and good. And I think the defaults lifestyle, you just want to achieve fine.
Yeah.
You like it just like it doesn't need to be perfect. If it's fine, it's fine. That's the subtitle of the book. If it's fine, it's fine. Well, speaking of things that are not just fine, but that are good, I think a major mistake has been made in macOS. And that is that Emacs no longer ships with it. Now, are you going to switch to Windows now, Matt Ray?
No. Well, no. As far as I know, Windows also isn't shipping with Emacs.
What?
I think this.
Someone needs to call that Scott Guthrie guy.
They could call it like Notepad plus plus, but
Oh yes.
no. I think I mean, this all goes back to the fact that Apple doesn't want to ship any GPL software.
Oh
And
right.
so, they've slowly, they replaced Bash with Z Shell. Um, and, they're slowly dropping all the GPL stuff out of their tool chain that they can. And Emacs was always kind of ancillary. And, people had complained that the version they were shipping was old and busted anyway. So, I mean, I think they're
Oh,
literally like 5 releases back. Not, I think they were shipping 22, and I think 27 is current.
that
Um,
means it's from like 1983 or something.
yeah, pretty much. But every serious Mac user uses Homebrew anyway, and there's Emacs for OS X. There's lots of places to get it if you want it. I get mine from Homebrew, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. Now you got to use Homebrew, which is fine. If you know what Emacs is, you're probably already using it and you like it. However, if you're using Emacs to manage packages on your system, you're gonna have a bootstrapping problem. So you might need to like dust off your make files.
I know. I guess Emacs doesn't really work in this area because I feel like the answer to all of this is just run everything in containers and never have to mess with Homebrew and all that stuff again. But Emacs is probably too. It's probably too
It works.
useful to just have it to just run it. I mean, you could, but it'd be annoying.
Yeah.
Container, but it's like
Too useful.
everything
I like
else,
that.
like I don't know. To me, it's like never install Python again. Just use the Python container. Like,
Right.
I never never install Java again. Right? Use the Java container. Like never mess with class path again.
Well, there's one thing that you can't containerize and separate out from the main thread, the main box of what you're using, and that's bureaucracy. And do we have any of that this episode, Brandon?
Yeah, a couple of quick things here. One, Chris says in Dallas, he said he's also team HEB, Cote. So I think was your sister-in-law or something. Someone was up there.
My brother and sister-in-law. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. So he says I guess the one that's in the north is always busy. But here's a little. This is my guess. All HEBs are busy, at least in Central Texas. I think they're all busy all the time. So good to hear from him. Couple things from Brian White Eagle today. He says that they're hiring a principal product manager for AI over at Procore, which is here in Austin. It's sort of a construction management SaaS of some kind. I know some people over there. They all seem to like it. So if you're looking for a job, you should go join the Slack and join the jobs channel, and you can direct message Brian. He'll tell you all about that job, if it's good or if it's bad. And then Cote, you were doing some moonlighting this week. You're on the Cloudcast talking about the ethics of using AI tools with our friend Brian Gracely. Good episode. I just finished listening to that. My answer is yes, you should use AI at work. That's the entire summary of the episode that I took from it. But listen to Brian and Cote to get a much more nuanced, if you will, take on that. And then also Brian White Eagle also wrote in, because I thought it was related to what you guys were talking about. He has kind of written up a whole, if you will, list of things where he's kind of captured some AI low-hanging fruit with agents, some ideas about how you can use it with SaaS companies. So if you're looking for some ideas that, if you will, are, dare I say, more practical things you can do right now, kind of like some of the things you talked about on the podcast with Brian Cote, you should read that as well. So it's always interesting to see like what people are actually doing with AI. So check all of those things out.
Well, there's several conferences coming up in a couple weeks now. There's Configuration Management Camp in Ghent in February 2nd to 5th. I'll be there speaking. It'll be nice. There's also the CIVO Navigate North America Conference, February 10th to 11th in San Francisco. And DevOps Days LA and Scale 22X, March 6th to 9th. I also just found out today that I'm going to be speaking at SRE Day London. I don't remember the dates. If you search for SRE Day London, you can find it. And eventually I'll copy and paste it into here at the conferences thing. There might even be a discount code. I don't know. It's a good conference. Actually, if you go look for SRE Day, they have like 5, maybe even 6 conferences, Western globally now, that you can check out. I don't think they're in Asia or Oceania or whatever. I
don't think I've seen it. Yeah.
Check that out. But that's a great conference. It's just small enough to not be big, if that makes sense. So it's I like that conference a lot. Speaking of things that we like a lot, Matt Ray, what do you have to recommend this episode?
Well, There two quick recommendations. Last week, did a little bit of holiday vacationing down in Tasmania, and I got to give Tasmania Parks and Wildlife Service a shout out. They have the best logo. So I'll just keep it in the show notes. Go Google it. It's awesome. It's just like a growling, Tasmanian, not a tiger, devil.
Devil.
And yeah, it's a great logo. And so I just every time I saw it, made me laugh. And my other pick is Bruce Sterling and John Lebkowski have their annual State of the World thread going. I haven't gotten to the end yet. I don't know if it's over, but it's always just a good take to get your kind of scattered technologist. I don't know what you call those guys, but if you like Bruce Sterling, if you like Cote, you'll probably like Bruce Sterling.
Oh, that's sweet. Now I'm going to ask you the same thing I ask every year, Matt Ray. Did you figure out how to remove the pre-tags so I can read it at the page width of my choosing? Because on the well, I don't know if you noticed this, but on the well, they put every single post in pre-tags, which indicates to the web browser you should
my gosh.
You should not allow this to be less than the predefined amount of spacing that we have, which means I can't read it on my mobile phone.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's very frustrating.
Oh, man.
Maybe there's an Emacs mode I could use. Oh, but it's not available.
Oh, perfect. It seems to work in reader mode, but that loses some of the other.
Okay,
formatting.
I'm gonna try that again because I'm pretty sure I tried it, but the well people suffering from they're suffering from legacy software over there at the well.
No. It's definitely not mobile friendly, I guess.
Yeah. Still, the content is worth it. I'll suffer through it to read.
It's good.
To read the
it's good content.
How about yourself, Brandon? What do you have to recommend?
Well, this came up in the Slack this week. So evidently, Starbucks is going to now require you to buy something if you want to hang out there and do work or use the bathroom and things like that. But I guess, I'm not a Starbucks person to begin with. So I told people, I was like, hey, the place I like to go when I'm looking for somewhere to work outside the home or the office, whatever, is the old Capital One Cafe. I think they're only here in the US. So it is a bank, but they've just basically built like a co-working space. And I happen to have an account there, but like, you don't have to. You can just go in there and work. People do it all the time. And you're free to stay as pretty much as long as you want. There is some type of like coffee bar kind of thing, some kind of refreshments. Like, it's not Starbucks or anything. I think I've maybe gotten like one thing there. I won't say it's fancy, but like, yeah. So if you're just looking for a place to work and you're in probably a major city in the United States, like I check it out. Go use Capital One Cafe. I didn't think it was a secret, but people were like, the bank? I'm like, yeah, the bank. The bank has a nice place to work. So I don't know, Coach. Are there places? I know Europe seems like there would be no co-working, right? If they're very specific about using public space, I assume. But
well, there are
cafes
there's co-working space. There's co-working space, but there's no like ING cafe that you would go to. The businesses here aren't into that. They're
well, in response, somebody, I don't know if they were from Europe, but they posted a picture of a Barclays, I guess, European bank, or I don't know if it's mostly in England, but anyway, they showed that what they have done is they have these like tiny little like kiosk type things in like a grocery store. And it's like this person sitting in like this cube. And it was like, that's all they have in Europe. I was like, yeah, that's the difference between the US and in the United States. We have these vast spaces that people just taking up, using whatever they want. In Europe, there's this little pod with a banker just like right in the middle of this like grocery store. And it was like, that didn't look good for anyone. But
no, poor banker.
Yeah, that's exactly what they said. People were saying it's like the poor banker just kind of sitting there. It's kind of weird, but whatever.
Yeah, I think maybe like a Malcolm Gladwell analysis of the difference between America and Europe would just be like Europe ran out of land, and that would drive everything. Probably a little more complex, but also they don't have ice. I think if they had ice and more land, it'd be exactly like America. That's all that's holding them back. Well, my recommendation this week, aside from the great foam stuff that I talked about, is I guess it's a secondhand recommendation, but my wife has rediscovered the joys of video gaming by using I forget if I mentioned this, offhandedly, but she's really gotten into that slime game. I should look up what it's called, but there's this game on the Switch that you run around in, and instead of shooting things, maybe, I don't know, but instead of shooting things, you have this gun and it sucks the slime into the gun, which I thought
this is Splatoon,
which awesome. I thought was that it's like a genius way of having a first-person shooter that's kind of non-violent, right? That's more cute, because it's all the same maneuvers and things that you do, but instead of something going out of your gun, it comes in. And I think she almost has a bordering an uncontrollable addiction to it, which is also cute because my son likes to play it, and so she and her will watch each other play. And I think we're just a few more weeks away from my mom watching, and my mom from that's a weird Freudian slip, from Kim watching people yelling in YouTube about the games that they're playing. I think pretty soon she's going to be watching people on YouTube playing these games.
I think they're a few weeks away from getting a second Switch where they can play head to head.
Well,
now that seems like the way to go.
I have floated that idea. Usually when Kim expresses some hole in our life that could be filled by me spending money, she immediately says no. But she didn't say no to that at all. She just kind of let it hang there in the air.
Coach, I just sold a used Switch. I wish I had given to you when you were here. They're pretty. You should get. Well, here's a tip. The Switch 2 is coming out in not too long, so maybe wait for that, and then you can buy yourself a used Switch.
It's true. And I think,
especially because Splatoon is a great game, especially if you're just gonna do Splatoon. You won't need any of the new stuff. So do it.
Yeah. And I think I've got a reminder for this in reminders, Matt. But Mother's Day is coming up, but I don't think you can pre-buy a Mother's Day present and then several months later be like, "Remember, I bought you one." I don't think that. But I could try. Well, speaking of things that don't count, what does count is that you listen to this entire episode of Software Defined Talk. Now, this was episode 502. Which means there's all sorts of links we talked about and didn't. If you want to see what those links are, the recommendations, those conferences, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/502. We've got a great Slack channel you can join, all sorts of conversation that goes on in the interim. Is it an interregnum between two things? I should go look this up.
Interregnum is between kings or monarchs.
Yeah. Huh. Well, we like to think of our each week, we bring a monarchy to you that's fully developed and enjoyable. So if you want to join in that Slack conversation, you can do that. Otherwise, just put it in your podcast thing, and we'll see you next week here on softwaredefinedtalk.com. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Good job as always. Good to see Brett on as well. So I don't know. I like the I'll answer this question here. It's one, DevOps Day Chicago is coming in March. So one, we should add that to the list. And then no, I think most people still use Homebrew. I personally dislike Homebrew. It's just so maybe I'm just a person of one that has tried to adopt the
even Linux users are using Homebrew now.
Yeah, it's just at the end, you're like, I'm not sure what was installed on here, and I know I can't clean it up. Maybe
it's way better than a lot of alternatives.
Well, what do you do? What should I do, man? I'm at some point here. I want to get a new Mac, and I've been doing the old migrate from.
I literally am about to reinstall my Mac.
I was gonna say so if I got a new Mac today, and so this one I've had here, I don't know how many Macs it goes back, but I've just been doing migrate for many years. But now there's but I'm always I think there's a lot of stuff.
I'm out of space. So should I do? And it's system backups and weird stuff.
Should I do clean install or should I migrate? Because I'm worried. What about all this music that I don't really need, but I'm afraid to let go of? That's the other thing. I'm just do I just
always clean install?
You're talking to
whatever the
device.
device.
So yeah.
Kote, you're a clean install person. You don't migrate.
Always. I think I've done a migrate once on an iPhone or something, but that was just because I felt like I had it perfectly set up. But I think a clean install is. I would never just copy over my laptop. I'd always go clean.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just straight copy. It's the migration assistant, right, through Mac. So it's not just. But
whatever it is, I would just start from scratch. I mean, I would have to be how do I install 1Password? Like I would have to, when you're installing 1Password, you're doing it right. You're doing things from.
Well, getting
from
people, the chat definitely believes clean install. Every Graham, Brett, everyone clean install. So, all right. Next time, I guess I never clean install an iPhone. Though. That I always back up recover. I don't know. Do you do that as well? You do a full clean install of an iPhone? Really? Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about this, but I think so. Just because,
I don't know. This is going to be my anecdote thing. I don't believe you. I don't believe when you get a new phone, you don't like hook it up and it doesn't migrate stuff over.
I might have like the last time because I finally gave in to the sentiment that you're saying, but like, and until if I did do it last time, until then, I'd always just started from default and doing it because, there's not the only real reason is just like because it's gives me something to do. It's fun to like go reset everything up.
Okay, I mean that's fair. That's a fair.
It's like
fair
home screen nulling. It's enjoyable.
Okay, all right. Well, good. I didn't realize. Wow, man, a clean install. Matt, what do you do, Matt, when you get a new iPhone?
Well, my last phone before this one was an Android, so it was a clean install by default.
So you were a clean install for sure, but you've not moved over since. You haven't gotten like a new one.
No, I was actually thinking about a battery. It's fine. Phone's fine. They don't make any small ones anymore. It's a 12 mini, so it's.
Well, hold out. They're coming with the slim phone for you. Maybe it's just for you this next year or so. Yeah, maybe that'll be a good. You'll have to give us your review of upgrading your iPhone next time. I don't know, Matt. I'm impressed. If you do a clean install, then I don't know. I'll have to really think about it. But I don't know. I've never done that on the iPhone. It seems way too hard. All right. Well, thanks for everyone watching us. I've definitely got some good feedback that clean install is a way to go. So I'll try to endeavor to do better on my next Mac install. We should be back next week about this time, hopefully around this time. So we will talk to you all